standing shoulder press, whether you do it with dumbbells or barbells, very effective exercise for the shoulders. The problem that you have, though, is if you think about Newton's third law, anytime there is an action, we were taught that there's an opposite and equal reaction. So the problem that we have is anytime you abduct the arm and externally rotate, kind of like we're doing on a shoulder press, you actually are driving that elbow back. And what's trying to happen is the head of the humerus is trying to come forward. Now, we need something to stop it from coming forward. Well, when your arm is in this position, you've got a very big muscle here called the anterior deltoid. That if I drive my arm backwards right here, it's going to stop that humeral head coming forward. But if you watch this knuckle right there, which is my anterior deltoid, look what happens as I press overhead. You notice how it rolls backwards. It's no longer stabilizing the front of my shoulder, which means when you're up in this overhead position here, doesn't matter how you got there, dumbbells or barbells, the problem that you have is that you don't have an anterior stabilizer, which means if you go too far back, a lot of people like to press behind their heads, putting a lot of stress on the anterior capsule of the shoulder, and that's a good way to get it injured. So there's two options. Number one, we should always stay slightly in front. In other words, keep the elbow in front of the midline of the body. That will avoid that anterior shear of the humerus. But there is another way. If you are doing movements, especially explosive movements where you have to push overhead, there is a muscle coming from behind the lat that actually wraps around into the front of the arm, and it can actually hold the arm back. So it's always a good idea to engage that muscle anytime you're doing an overhead press. Now the way to do it is don't simply press. To get that lat engaged, I want you to punch. So make a tight fist. And with a tight fist, remember, you would never punch like that. So in the overhead position, you need to be in a tight fist position because we know that the neurons in the hand are hardwired and connected to the shoulder, that when you make a strong fist, you stabilize the shoulder. So we're going to actually punch to the ceiling. And what you'll feel is a lot of tension right through here. That is your lat being engaged. So if I take a bar, right, so I'm in my starting position, rather than just pressing overhead, what I want you to do is punch overhead. And a good way to actually train yourself is to hold this position and walk around. Walk around, and every time you feel the wrist tiring, your wrist will start to roll back. Take them back to this position, or come on back down, and punch again. That's a great way to kind of protect your shoulders anytime you're doing an overhead press.